degrees for tomorrow. A few storms in the morning, then turning partly sunny, a little bit cooler, 75 degrees tomorrow night, partly cloudy, 58. Then for Saturday, it looks like some storms in the afternoon with a high of 82 degrees. Right now, St. Peter's reporting a heavy thunderstorm in 65 degrees. Florissant, heavy rain in 68. In downtown of the Arch, it's just starting to rain now at 68 degrees. I'm Maria Kina, KMOX News.
Y98 presents the St. Louis City Soccer Report on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
We're on KMOX City, St. Louis City Soccer Report. Jennifer Cease, Nate Gatter, Kyle Sixta on the controls here in kind of a dimly lit studio with a little bit of rain outside. So ambiance, Nate, we've got ambiance.
Yeah, the weather has been bad for some recent Thursdays. Of course, what was it? A couple of weeks ago when we had the outage of the AM signal
Right.
because of the tornado warnings and everything. So hopefully we're not the ones bringing the bad weather.
So we've got a packed show tonight. 2 hours, full 2 hours. Just like, I'm a little jealous, by the way, of Matt Pauley getting Kevin Egan. I tried real hard to get Sasha, who, was busy being a soccer dad. He wasn't available because he's being a soccer dad tonight. That would have been funny.
Jen?
How do you say his name? Kleiston?
Question?
I said it almost close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who, would have been funny to say, like, did you really hit Kevin that hard? Or was it the dress shoes? Or how did that go down? Because Andrew Wiebe once again said no foul when we had him on last week. So we will not get him tonight. If you are listening now, definitely go back and I think it was around 6:30, 6:40 that Matt Pauley had Kevin on, and it was great to hear him talk a little bit about City in general, about what he thought of the rivalry game with SKC, and just kind of his overall thoughts on where City is so far and how he believes that City has the ability to fight for what they need to fight for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair, right? I mean, where they are right now, we talked about all the draws. It's just a question of which team are City in the end, right? Do we have a team that has been dropping 2 points when they should get 3 and they've been settling for 1 instead consistently, and they're going to start getting 3? Or do we have a team that's been fortunate to get a point a few times and they're going to start dropping some of those games? Now, the good news is if it's half and half, they still come out ahead, right? If you win half and lose half and never draw, you're better off than drawing every game. You're 50% better. You could win 17 and lose 17 and make the playoffs. You probably can't draw 34 and make the playoffs.
No, probably no. It was nice to hear him say that he thought in terms of going into Houston that St. Louis was not necessarily going to have a problem, so to speak. Houston's a little bit of a different team. There's definitely some revenge to have for our previous meetings with Houston, but that he thought, and it's something that Coach Carnell talked a little bit about on Tuesday, and I think a little bit today in the press conference, that Houston's possession, they're a possession team, and they like to possess in the back, and the City can capitalize on that and cause them, get the jump on it, is what Coach said, and cause some turnovers, that could be something good. Besides that, what else is coming up in the show? Of course, Dale Schilly. We'll hear from Thomas Totland. Got to catch up with him a little bit and had an interview with him on Tuesday. George Gansner talking about some laws of the game. And in the second hour, we will talk to Edmund Elsie, talking about Leagues Cup tickets and how this might be an opportunity for maybe non-season ticket holders to experience St. Louis City Park. Along with talking to, God, I have a long list today. I'm trying to remember everybody. Trying to also talk to Charles Bohm, who's covering the Leagues Cup. We'll have good thoughts on Columbus Crew making it to the final against Monterey, as well as talking with a local St. Louis club, St. Charles FC's got some good news on the horizon. So that'll be in the 9 o'clock, the second hour of the show. One of the things I think was on everybody's mind this week, Nate, was the fact that Samuel Adeniran back in training. And I was surprised as anybody to see him step up and be ready for us with the microphones. And he had some thoughts on being back.
They always accepted me, so, I mean, I don't really think there was really any much of a reintegration, I mean, I've been here for the past 2 seasons. I've done my job, I'd say, pretty good. So, and I think others would say that as well. So my resume speaks for itself.
And I will... I don't feel right to, I have guesses. I have thoughts and feelings on being a player, being a coach, sometimes being somebody that's left out of play or practices or leaving somebody out. I've got thoughts, but they would only be conjectures. I will say that it was nice to see him back. It was nice to see him score some goals at practice. super proud of him for stepping up to the mic and talking about something that was really awkward. He didn't really want to dwell on the past, and he's glad to be back.
I would say I am similarly hesitant to speculate. I am not hesitant though to at least read between the lines to the degree of trying to make an induction or two based on Adeniran's word choices and tone, and also though we didn't hear them, Bradley Carnell's word choices and tones when he was I would say to the extent that St. Louis media presses somebody, Bradley Carnell was pressed for a little bit more on where exactly is this right now.
And they are 2-second answers.
Right. And he says essentially, I'm not going to go into it. I don't think it's that interesting, which obviously he knows it's interesting and why it is. He just doesn't want to talk about it.
Right.
And it's more acceptable for him to say, I don't think it's that interesting than to say, I'd rather not talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, the line the basic line you got was it's internal, it's an internal deal. We're professionals. He's back. If he's back and he's training, he's eligible to play. And that's all he's going to say about it.
So I am both surprised in good news and bad news, right? I am surprised that it's been resolved as quickly as it has been. I expected Adeniran would be training on his own for much longer because that's I don't want to say drastic, but it's a significant step to take. It reflects that both sides are sort of fed up with one another and at a point where they don't feel their relationship is workable, at least in the short term. But it was resolved to at least a point of workability and professionalism quickly. So that's good. The bad news is I'm surprised that there still seems to be the level of strain that there is based on how carefully both of them chose their words and how short both of their answers were when asked about it. And they were both sort of standoffish is too strong a word, but kept it at an arm's length and said, we're just being professionals about this,
Very
right?
professional.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
it is professional to handle it that way, but it doesn't express that now there's been a hug it out and we're everybody's buddies again.
No, I will say that Samuel did talk a little bit about how he is looking forward to playing in Houston. So he's going back. He's playing in front of family. I'm sure that training on your own is isolating. And I'm sure anybody getting back if they're here in St. Louis from out of town is a good, fun thing. And it makes me wonder a little bit of, were we able to come to agreement a little bit faster, considering this is a potential chance for him to play in front of family and friends?
So
I don't know.
The other concern, obviously, and we've talked about this for the last couple of weeks, including with Taylor Twellman 2 weeks ago, is the contract situation for Adeniran. The contract is up at the end of the season. He is making the league minimum, which obviously does not encompass the quality and the contribution that he's made to City over the last calendar year or so that he's really been part of the first team setup since he was recalled from that loan in San Antonio. And it's understandable that he would feel not too satisfied with that without the long-term security, as we've talked about before. And I'll reiterate it just because the tension seems to still be there to some extent, or at least everybody's not arm in arm, happy-go-lucky. I'm surprised that City would turn down the $1 million they reportedly did for him just a couple of months ago. If not even 6 weeks ago, it was reported at least that they had this offer on the table from a Norwegian side, turned down $1 million to lose him potentially at the end of the season. And as Taylor Twellman said, could constructively lose him as soon as 2 months from now, because when he gets into the last 6 months of his contract, he'll be eligible to sign a pre-contract with any team outside of MLS, maybe other American leagues, but he wouldn't go to a minor league anyway. So he'd be eligible to sign a pre-contract with a foreign team. And City, I think at this point, just from the outside, without any inside information, you have to think it's more likely than not that they lose him and don't get any compensation back, which they'll still have gotten great contribution for low salary. So it'll still be a successful move to have picked him up and brought him to St. Louis. Not as successful as it could have been to have also then sold him on for $1 million.
Right. Well, more to come. Dale Schilly is going to join us. He'll be with Joey Zanaboni on the Y98 call in Houston. I don't think Dale has also just been off this week too, so it might be fun to catch up with him on what he's been doing on the academy side. Dale Schilly on the other side of the break right here on KMOX.
It's Tom Ackerman for Innsbruck. Just
Y98 St. Louis City Soccer Report continues on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Listen, there's always things to improve, whether that's on the field or in the video room or one-on-ones. We continue to see progress. Really happy with some of the performances. Happy for Celio, happy for Rasmus that he's getting a string of games now without pain. Klaus is working his socks off, and Nukvi showing good things when he comes in. Overall, I think we can be really excited about where we are currently as an attacking group.
Bradley Carnell talking this week about some of the attackers and City trying to create and score more goals. He mentioned Rasmus Alm specifically playing without pain. Finally, my guy. I've been waiting
you really
for it.
think about that? And he mentioned that in his interview with me that when we played it the week before, it was 2 weeks ago now, that he was in pain all last year. And he wasn't saying it like poor me, but I think he's so relieved to find himself again and not be playing like that. It's hard to play in pain.
My hot City take has always been Rasmus Alm is the most talented City forward and has been from day one, and he's
putting it on Klaus's foot, man.
I love it.
Another one who's not really, quote, an attacker, but we will hear from him on the other side of Dale is Thomas Totland, who is a part of that attack, so to speak. But in the meantime, we welcome Dale Schilly. He's St. Louis City Academy Director, my buddy, and Y98 analyst. Hi, Dale. And what did you think on Tuesday? I saw you walking up to me near at practice, and then Samuel Adeniran was ready to get on the microphones. I was surprised.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good step. And look, we can talk about the attacking players and good performances, but depth is important. Whether depth is provided from Sam or depth provided by Sam's insertion into the lineup, we will need those players, especially as we get through the dog days.
Although it's funny, isn't it, Dale? And you're absolutely right about depth, but we spent so much time talking about that last year, in part because City's depth, I think, objectively was not at the level that it is now, and in part because they played so many more games between in Open Cup and then with Leagues Cup. This year we were gearing up for, it's really going to be tested. They have CONCACAF Champions Cup added to the mix. There's going to be so much, and in the end, that was only 2 games. There was no Open Cup. And Leagues Cup really doesn't overlap. So if anything, they've added depth and they've reduced the number of games they're going to end up having to play. I wonder if as a result, even though we're disappointed not to be part of the Open Cup and we're disappointed certainly to have only played 2 games in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, if it ends up serving City well in terms of trying to be a little closer to their best in September and October than they were last year.
I would say a couple things. I agree. We geared up for more games. We didn't have them at that time. I don't know that there was a decision made yet on Open Cup and how that was gonna play out. I would say where we are right now, we're benefiting from a consistent lineup, something that a lot of people were clamoring for a year ago when Bradley was switching things up and really, trying to play the hot hand. I would say Klaus has benefited from having increased minutes. We've seen that he's capable of working his way through a large part of the game at a high level of energy and work rate. So I think he's benefited from that. And I think, obviously Rasmus has, and I know you got Thomas Totland coming on. The Rasmus-Totland relationship in that right flank is purely because of the amount of time they spend together on the field. At the same time, you, as a coach, you have to look on your bench and find guys that can come in and change a game. And in order to change a game, you have to have a specific quality that puts you above and beyond some other players. It may not put you in the starting lineup at that particular time, but it's something that you can bring to the game that changes it. Sam obviously has that if he's not in the first 11. So, finding guys on the bench, looking, when you look over your shoulder and you need somebody to come in and change it, you need to see talent and guys that can come in and change it. And I think that's where we're going to benefit from it. And it could happen in August, September, and October.
Looking last hour, Nate and I were talking a little bit about it before your segment, Dale, that Kevin Egan from MLS Season Pass on Apple TV was on with Matt Pauley and talking a little bit about when it came to Houston. He said, he didn't really see Houston as being a problem for St. Louis City, right? That he felt that they could take that, and perhaps Houston having their possession rate, I think it was called out in a presser this week that it was toward the back end of their field where they like to hold possession, could be an advantage for City to get the jump.
For sure, a team that wants to keep the ball in the back half of the field and attract pressure and then play beyond it, can be dangerous in that they could play behind your back four. And we gave up a goal against Sporting. We spoke about it last week. But it does allow us the opportunity to get ourselves organized and get numbers up against the ball. And nobody presses like we do. Nobody puts in the energy, the work rate that City does when it feels like that there's an opportunity to win a ball. When we see one of our pressing triggers, guys release in a unified way, and we get pressure against the ball. For Houston, it starts with their goalkeeper, or it starts with the back four, but then with their goalkeeper. When you watch Steve Clark play, who's a very good goalkeeper, he invites pressure. He'll hold on to the ball and allow the opposition to step higher with the intention of trying to pick a ball off. And once he does that, then he'll play out. He'll find a free guy, and then they'll try to play beyond you. So I think it does play into our hands, but they can be dangerous that way as well.
Yeah, this is going to be already the third meeting with Houston this year because of those two CONCACAF Champions Cup games that were played back in February. And in the end, these two teams will play each other 4 times when Houston visits City Park, the penultimate game of the regular season on October 5th. And then we talked about it a little bit last week, Dale, but this is going to be a big stretch then after the Houston game. First of all, that's important because both teams right now, it's early, but are right around that playoff cut line, and games in May count just the same as games in September and October when you add up all the points. And then after that, the big week that we talked about in last week's show, which is home against Chicago, home against LAFC, and away against Cincinnati, with 3 games in a 7-day span, the 11th, 15th, and 18th. So to that conversation about the depth, it feels like that might be the first time, or maybe the second time this year, the depth has really been tested, and we get to see some of it rise to the top, if you will, and some of those guys who have been in secondary roles get big chances in big games. How do you think Bradley will manage 3 games in 7 days, and 2 of them against LAFC and Cincinnati, marquee teams in the league?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, how he does manage his way through that. For me, you get your points when you can, and you got to put your best foot forward at home. So, I would think that you go, and I think knowing Bradley well enough now, you go all out in the Chicago Fire game to get those 3 points. And then based on how guys recover after that game, you go all out against LAFC. Now, all out may mean that a rested so-and-so gets the nod over a fatigued so-and-so. So however that plays out, but I think on each one of those games, he's not going to go in with a pre-planned idea unless somebody's recovering from injury as to how or who he's going to rest and how he's going to rotate. I think he'll make an assessment. He and Jared and the staff and Kelly, they'll look at the numbers. They'll look at all the running numbers, the number of sprints, the total yards, all that kind of stuff. They'll check all the details out, and then they'll make a decision on what is their best lineup for the next night. And he's always done that. Outside of the Leagues Cup last year, where you felt like it was a little bit different, I could see in these 3 games, I could see him trying to figure out what his best lineup's going to be.
Well, and just thinking too about all the variables in the Houston game, looking back at Houston's recent loss to Austin, 1-0, Dallas 2-0. I know Hector Herrera is back. And just like you said, Coach Carnell, making those kind of last minute decisions. We know Samuel, he said, if he's at training, he's available, right? So, but Chris Durkin spoke at the press conference today, and he's got some kind of weird knock on his knee and is progressing, but coach was non-committal as far as him being involved. And by the way, he has 4 yellow cards.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think, first off, the Hector Herrera thing, I mean, he's a huge addition. If he's, starting, I'm assuming he'll get 45-ish. I think the last 2 games he's had 25 to 30 minutes each. The last game against, was it Dallas? They were man down early on. But he just changes everything for them. So not only is he an addition because of his quality, and he's one of the better midfield players in the league, but it allows them to move Carrasquilla higher up the field. So with Herrera out, Carrasquilla has been playing as one of the 6s with Arthur. and with Herrera in the game, Carrasquilla can go higher, usually as a wide midfield player, and playing next to Bassi. So they become much more dangerous when Herrera comes in because of his quality, but because of how they can move some players around. If we're missing Chris Durkin, that's a huge hit because I think all of us recognize his quality in our system and how he is so disruptive and just destroys attacks from the other team. So hopefully that knee is on the mend and we'll get a chance to see him. He's so darn fit that I'm not at all concerned about him missing a few training sessions and not being able to step in if he's healthy.
Thanks, Dale. We look forward to hearing from you on the call with Joey Zanaboni from Houston on Saturday.
All right. Thank you, guys.
As Dale Schilly, up on the other side of the break, we've got a couple more things to do. Thomas Totland right back for St. Louis City as CNI caught up on Tuesday. And of course, we've always got to cover laws of the game with George Gansner. More to come on the St. Louis City Soccer Report right here on KMOX.
Hey guys, Glover here from my friends at ThrottleNet. So I'm so
KMOX Day at the Ballpark. Tickets on sale now and going fast at cardinals.com/theme. The Y98 St. Louis City Soccer Report continues on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
The first hour of the St. Louis City Soccer Report rolls on. You've got us on AM 1120, 98.7 FM, and on the free Odyssey app, where you can go back and get anything you missed, including our conversation with Dale Schilly, or if you're going to be away from your radio, for our great guests still coming up, including Laws of the Game with George Gansner at the bottom of the hour, or in our second hour when we'll talk to Charles Boehm of MLS coverage, who will talk to us about CONCACAF Champions Cup. In fact, outside of MLS, where Columbus Crew, with their win over Monterrey, advanced to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. We'll talk to Edmund Elzey, Vice President of Ticket Sales for St. Louis City, about Leagues Cup. And we'll also be talking a little St. Charles FC of the USL at the end of the second hour, little local soccer announcement. But before that, it's time to hear from St. Louis City right back. Thomas Totland, who has been a borderline revelation in year one with the club, and he talked this week with our own Jen Cease.
Here with Thomas Totland, defender for St. Louis City SC.
I was actually a midfielder when I was younger, so I actually started playing fullback when I was about 16. I've played both wingback and fullback. I enjoy both of them. When you play wingback, you come up further up in the field, and
you gotta go all the way back.
Exactly, but that's also what happened against Kansas. We switched the positions, and I got further up the field, and that creates scoring opportunities.
So first of all, how about St. Louis City supporters on the road? Was that cool?
So I was telling my teammates that it actually feels like we're on home turf. It was amazing, just seeing that red corner. It just helped us so much. I think that helped us to get that 1 point in that game.
I watched that goal over and over. And can you take me through, when did you see that as an opportunity? When did you decide to go?
I think it actually started when the goalkeeper kicked up, because I also knew that it was 92 minutes. We had to have that goal. And I saw the ball going up from Cal, and I thought maybe one of them were going to kick it long and I would be there. So that's kind of why I came in that speed that I came, because I kind of gambled and paid off.
So you're going no matter what.
Yeah. I think you can see on the video that I started walking, and I'm just thinking, if that ball comes there, I'm going to be first. And when it came, the guy tackled. My main target was to just get it over, and a free kick wouldn't have helped anybody, at that point. When I got past, it felt like it was 50 meters through the goal, but everything went so fast, and super happy that it went in.
And it's so easy to let that momentum sometimes carry the ball over the goal, or it doesn't go on frame. How do you maintain the mental and physical discipline? You're tired, you know that a lot is on the line, and you didn't just shoot it. You slotted that into the corner.
It's almost like the world stops, and you just think about all these scenarios through your mind. I was first thinking that maybe Klaus would come on the cutback, and then the keeper came out, so maybe I should take a touch past him, but it ended with him kind of opening up that right corner, and I took it.
Rasmus was my last interview, and I just told him, it's so fun to watch the two of you work together. It feels to me like you guys have been on the same team for a couple of years. Does it feel like that to you guys?
Yeah, it does. We spend a lot of time together outside of trainings, and we know each other well. He's a easy player to play with. He does his job very good. It's something that we both put a lot of work into, helping each other. And he always comes back. And I think it was against Austin when he tracked that guy all the way on the back post. That's kind of what I want from a winger. So super happy.
So official comment: Klaus and Agata, foul or no foul?
No foul.
No foul.
No foul. No foul. So that was
just needs to be more ready, right?
Yeah, I mean, Klaus showed up. He did.
What I love too about Klaus is that every striker is different, but I love that he's a combo striker, that he overlaps Celio.
Yeah, sure.
And for 2 seconds, that takes a defender's mind, doesn't know where to go. And it opened up for Celio, I think, yeah?
Yeah, you see Klaus telling Celio to break down, and so he can actually make that space for him. And Durkin also runs down and takes with that one defender that opens up. That's kind of what we have to do, help each other out so we can create those goal scoring opportunities.
How do you work with the backs and the midfielders on the other side?
If Anthony goes up, I have to cover in if it's somebody there. If not, I can track outside the box. We have to do that dirty job for each other, and that's what we have to keep on doing.
Remind me of little Thomas Totland's start in soccer.
It was my older brother that's 2 years older than me.
They make you better.
Yeah, they do, because you always want to beat them. But for me, it was just super fun to be with him and his friends on the pitch, and just trying to be as good as the guys that were 2 years older than me. And I think that grew my love for the game. And from that, I started in the senior team in Fana, which was in the second division, and went from the first to the top division and then to Sweden. For me, it's always just been that fun with my brothers that's kept that love in the game.
I think when we talked last, February 15th, you were going to leave that, I think, and go to IKEA. Are you settled?
Yeah, I am settled. At that point, I think I had about a truck full of stuff waiting for me at IKEA, and I had about an hour to get there. But super happy to have it settled in, and yeah, me and my wife are enjoying it.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
MLS season is really getting to what I think is more of the grind. So we kind of got past the first months, the cold months. Now we're in months and it's going to get really hot here soon. Coming up soon, I think there's a Saturday, then a Wednesday, then a Saturday game, and then the traveling. And I know we talked a little bit. I spent time in a van or bus. You spent time in a van. Have you done that though, switching time zones a lot?
At that time that we spoke, I didn't know about all the time zones. To be fair, it hasn't been that bad, but of course it takes a little bit on your body, switching from 2 hours and back. But when I was in Sweden, we were busing 6 hours, 7 hours, and it's
You're like, this is easy.
yeah. On a plane with a lot of space, I'll take that any day. But I actually quite enjoy these travels because I haven't been to all these places, so it's almost like a little soccer vacation every time. I just enjoy being with the boys.
We're not even midway through the season. What do you think about your progress so far, and where do you want to be by the time playoffs roll around? You played a lot of minutes.
Yeah, of course. But I just want to keep on helping the team and hopefully getting goals and assists, helping in that way. And also, helping Roman in the back there and not giving up too many chances.
Thomas Totland, City right back with our own Jen Cease this week. And certainly he has played a big part both defensively and offensively. Maybe the most ubiquitously involved City player of the season so far. Certainly the signing of the year, without a doubt, and probably in the best signing of the year team, if you will, in MLS. We'll talk to George Ganser, former MLS and FIFA assistant referee for Laws of the Game, when we come back, wrapping up the first hour. Still a lot more to come with you until 10 o'clock here on KMOX.
If you have a problem with the IRS, believe me, it's not going away.
7 days a week. Best flooring, best selection, best buy flooring.
The Y98 St. Louis City Soccer Report continues on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Welcome back to the St. Louis City Soccer Report, hour number one, but end of hour number one, which means it's a certain time.
Now, laws of the game.
Nate Gatter and Jen Cease, joined by George Gansner, former FIFA and MLS assistant referee, who is probably on a kid's soccer pitch somewhere, hopefully with a decent signal to talk about laws of the game. Where are you, George?
I'm inside, though. I'm inside the Fuse building because they're lighting outside.
Yes, we did see a few strikes right outside the window here downtown. So stay safe. They pulled the kids off the field, though, yeah?
Well, it's inside. It's up at the Dome up there in Network City.
All right, so let's take a look at some laws. I mean, we didn't have a game from City this last week. So what is it that you wanted to check out? I think you had mentioned maybe talking about some of the new things that we've put into place and maybe taking a look at some other matches around the league.
Yes, it was really interesting this weekend. I think, 10, 11 matches, there were 3 denial of a clear goal scoring opportunity red cards. So I thought without a City match, and one of those red cards does actually impact the City match this weekend, is we could talk about how those all came down and what dog show really is. So dog show, again, denying a clear goal scoring opportunity, you take a couple of criteria in order for it to be a red card. And so you have to have consideration as a direction to the goal, as a player going toward the goal. What is distance to the goal? So is it at the midfield line and could somebody catch them, or is it really closer to the penalty area and it makes sense? And then the number of defenders, right? And the number of defenders is, can another defender catch up and keep that ball from happening or getting to the goal? The fourth criteria is there really a chance for that player to score? And one of them was against Vancouver, against the Red Bulls, and there was a clear handling offense, no question. Then with, in particular, the Seattle goalkeeper, Stefan Fry, he took a red card for taking down a DC United player. That has been rescinded. But in any case, it was, for me, as a clear goal scoring opportunity. The referees did their job, and the disciplinary committee changed their mind and rescinded it. And then the third one that affects St. Louis is that Dorsey of Houston, one of their defenders, took a red card for, again, denial of a clear goal scoring opportunity for a trip on a breakaway. So the opponent, which was Dallas, forward was on a breakaway, and Dorsey took him out right at the top of the penalty, send off for denial of clear goal scoring opportunity and all the criteria.
George, you're breaking up a little bit, so I'm not sure if you can get to a place where a signal is a little bit better. I think we got most of those, talking a little bit about different impacts to games, right? In terms of denial of a clear goal scoring opportunity with games going on around the league. DC and Seattle, Red Bull and Vancouver, Dallas and Houston, which impacts, of course, the games going on. The other thing to maybe talk about, too, wanted to get your thoughts on, is the fact that we have, I believe it's, if Tom Timmerman quoted it correctly this week, 3 St. Louis City players walking into Houston on 3 yellow cards. One of them is Chris Durkin, who made a great tackle on SKC, and did talk a little bit today about how he was trying to, he is mindful of the fact that, and that Coach Carnell is also trustworthy of trusting his players, that they are mindful of making sure that they are not committing anything that would be, at least, honestly, a stupid yellow card, right? And so you may still need to do a professional foul. How does that impact the crew as well as players going in when you've got several players on that yellow card?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me a bit better. But
much better, thank you.
Yeah, the referees should understand who is on yellow card peril when they're going to referee the game, right? It doesn't mean you treat them any differently, but you understand that those players, you don't need to give a soft yellow to the players in particular who are on a yellow card warning. That'll be suspended the next time. That is easy to do because, if sometimes a game needs a yellow card and you find one, well, you're not going to find one for that player to settle things down, right? Because that player is on a suspension peril. So they are prepared when that happens. I've said it before. I've been in games where players have come up and ahead of the game and said, "Hey guys, I'm on my 4th yellow. I need a 5th yellow next week. I've got to get this out of the way, or so I don't have to play next week. Can we take care of that tonight?" And the answer is just don't do anything stupid, don't hurt anybody, and we'll do the best we can, right? To support. Just throw the ball away at a really bad time or something that makes it so.
Be a big baby.
And no, that's a good point. I was thinking, how can you do that? Because on the one, also you have sort of an ethical obligation, right, not to give a yellow for a really soft foul that you never would, just to do a favor for a team, right? It's not your job to be out there doing guys favors. So maybe the best way is to give them instructions on how to get a surefire yellow that won't endanger anyone and won't endanger them of getting a red.
Yeah, so that's 100% correct, right? There's an integrity point there. And you cannot stop a player from picking up the ball and kicking it away or doing something like that. That can be, if you know that there's a situation, they're going to do that on purpose. You can kind of play back with them and say, "I'm not doing it. You can kick the ball away all you want. I'm not giving you a yellow card." So, it's not manipulating the game. It's really not. But you don't want somebody to get hurt. You don't want them to go into a bad tackle and then potentially hurt a player for a yellow card that you could have managed a completely different way.
Or end up getting a red card if they get it wrong. You could end up with a player who's hurt and a player who's getting a red, and nobody comes out of that ahead. So, that's an interesting point about throw the ball, kick the ball away, whatever. The funny thing is, and I would imagine this has happened a time or two when you've had these circumstances, if it's a player on the home team and you give them a kind of soft yellow for kicking the ball away, you could end up getting booed for giving a yellow in the home stadium when the player's happy to have it.
Sometimes getting booed is fun.
Okay, with only like a minute left or so, got to ask you though. So if you're the opponent, right, and a team's coming in with 3 guys on 4 yellows, is that a strategy? And then how do you manage that as a referee?
Oh man, it can be a strategy. Again, I think from a referee's perspective, it's just something that you really need to know. You need to know as a possibility in the game and just prepare for it, right? A lot of those things you can't control them, but you can manage them, and that's what you have to try to do.
That feels like a sentence that could be put at the front of the referee handbook, right? We can't control the game, but we can manage the game.
Yeah, that's exactly what the intention is, right? I had the chance to have lunch with a former NHL referee who used to live in St. Louis a long, long time ago, who said, "Listen, at this level, it's no longer about refereeing, it's about managing." And so you learn that lesson early on.
George, we appreciate you as always. Have a great week, and we'll have some city to talk about next weekend when we talk next.
Looking forward to it.
Former MLS, FIFA, and MLS and FIFA assistant referee George Ganser with us, as always, here on the St. Louis City Soccer Report. And he will be busier for us because next week we'll be able to look back at whatever happens this Saturday night between City and Houston Dynamo.
Actually, I don't think we have a show next week.
That's right.
Boo.
Good point. Well,
Boo, Steve.
The week after that, the 16th,
and then you're leaving.
I won't be here. But
It'll be me.
That's going to be a really busy show because there will have been 3 games since then. Houston, Chicago, and LAFC. And then Cincinnati will be coming up in just a couple of days.
We're going to need like an extended version or something. Matt Pauley's going to have to give up a little bit of Sports Open line or something.
St. Louis City Soccer Report, Taylor's version.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, longer. Jen's version trying to cover 3 games without Nate.
Still a whole second hour to come. Speaking of extended versions, and we'll have Edmund Elzey after the news talking about city ticket sales, in particular the Leagues Cup coming up in a couple of months' time, and then Charles Boehm. I'm really excited to hear from.
Who can talk anything?
Yes, he can. And Andrew Wiebe mentioned to us last week that the Columbus Crew are sort of the slightly under the radar storyline, maybe, especially relative to how Messi dominates the headlines right now. With Miami, that Columbus Crew having a phenomenal year, and they become the first MLS team to win back-to-back away legs over Mexican sides, and they go through to play Pachuca in the Champions Cup final.
Exciting.
Stay with us. News is next. It's the St. Louis City Soccer Report on KMOX.
To have a roof over your head, a nice roof over your head, is very important.
That's Rick talking about his experience with Ryan.
the St. Louis City Soccer Report on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Hour 2 of the St. Louis City Soccer Report. We've got a lot to get to in this second hour. We've already talked to Dale Schilly. We've heard from Thomas Totland, who sat down with Jen this week, and from George Ganser in the first hour. Nate Gatter, Jen Cease, with you for the second hour. You can be with us, of course, on KMOX on the AM or FM dial. You can also hear us on the free Odyssey app, AUDACY. You can hear City games there. You can hear Cardinals games there. And City back in action after the week-long break on Saturday night, heading down to Houston. Jen will have the pregame for you at 7. Joey Zanaboni and Dale Schilly will have the call for you at 7:30. That's on our sister station, Y98. And then the big week to follow. The next Saturday, City return home the 11th to City Park against Chicago. They'll play again at home on Wednesday, the 15th, against LAFC, and then against Cincinnati on the road on May 18th. Elsewhere around the league, we had action last week. We talked about some of that with George Ganser, some of the refereeing incidents that went down. And outside of MLS, but involving MLS teams, the Columbus Crew are through to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. They've been not bad, but sort of average by their standards so far in MLS play. 5th in the Eastern Conference on 15 points behind Miami, Cincinnati, New York Red Bulls, and Toronto. But they've been fantastic in CONCACAF Champions Cup. They got a 2-1 win at home a couple of Wednesdays ago over Monterrey. And they then went on the road and won 3-1 over Rayados in Mexico last night. And they became the first team in MLS history to win back-to-back games, back-to-back second legs away against Mexican teams in CONCACAF competition. They beat Tigres a couple of weeks prior on penalties, though both those games ended 1-1 in Columbus, and then the second leg away. And they won 4-3 on penalties in the quarters to get to Monterrey in the semis against former FC Cincinnati striker and MLS All-Star Brandon Vasquez. And now, after they play then their big Ohio derby against Columbus, Hell is Real, as it's known, named after some very conspicuous billboards on the highway in between Cincinnati and Columbus. If you've ever made that drive, you know what I'm talking about. And June 1st, they will play Pachuca in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. That game was supposed to be June 2nd initially, but that is a Mexican election day. And so that's been moved. I guess that was an oversight when they were initially scheduling, because it seemed like a safe bet that Liga MX would have at least one team through, but one way or the other, Columbus against Pachuca for the CONCACAF Champions Cup title on June the 1st at Estadio Hidalgo. And we will talk to Charles Boehm about that coming up in just about 10 minutes. And we'll be talking a little local youth soccer, which, Jen, I know you love to do toward the end of this first hour as well. St. Charles FC USL have some announcements that they're
pretty
excited
exciting.
to get to
Pretty
as
exciting.
well.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, when you think about also to the Saturday game, I have to call it the fact that I always get tagged in some stuff about the St. Louis City supporters. Different supporters groups are around the area. So not only does City have watch parties, and they have it on their website. Matt Seebeck and his team works to keep that updated. The St. Louligans put out a post today with St. Louis City Santos and some others that are going to be at 9 Mile Garden, I believe, for a watch party and to bring all your friends. And they said, "Are you coming?" And I said, "Well, I do have a show to do. I suppose it starts at, let's see, it looks like it starts at 5 p.m. You know, I could safely stop by." And then Santos replied, "Sure. Okay, 3 margaritas." And I'm like, absolutely not. If you want anything timed right for the pregame, we're not going to be doing that.
That would be kind of exciting, though. You know,
it could be funny. I would get fired.
You know, I mean, CNN does the gets their hosts a little bit liquored up for the New Year's Eve ball drop. I guess they do a little less of that now. They were pushing the limits. Kind of Don Lemon that one year looked like he was barely conscious, and so they were like, okay, we gotta rein this in.
You know,
but we could do one game a year. Jen, Joey, and Dale get a little loose with it.
But we definitely need somebody, Kyle, and maybe another person to be like, hey, we have timing. You have to be on time for things. You know,
got to be on time.
You have to be on time.
Although it's not a radio network, at least there aren't other stations relying
that is
on
true.
it. So you got at least a few seconds to
It'll
play
be
with.
fine.
Yeah,
Joey can go to take a bathroom break longer or something like that.
A little fuzzy. It's no big deal. We did want to talk about Leagues Cup. Unfortunately, I think Edmund Elsie not going to be able to join us, City's vice president of ticket sales, but that doesn't stop us from giving you at least some of the updates.
Sure.
Maybe without the same flair that he would have, but we can give you at least some of the information that City want to make sure that you have. Mainly that tickets are available now for Leagues Cup. So this is really, it's the only non-MLS competition remaining for City at this point because they didn't participate in U.S. Open Cup in the end this year, to be fair, against their own will. And they were bounced from CONCACAF Champions Cup rather quickly in those first two games against Houston Dynamo. So for those of you who have heard us talk, and I don't think we've been shy about saying we get it's really expensive to go to City Park. And to be fair, I think the club recognized that too. You know, part of the issue is they have a ton of season ticket holders, which is a good thing. And they have a ton of demand for the limited single game tickets that come on sale beyond that. So everything that's available after the first few hours single game tickets are on sale is pretty much secondary market, which the club can't control how people are pricing their tickets for resale. I think they have done a decent job of keeping the face value of the tickets reasonable, considering how phenomenally great their demand is.
Right.
They understand and we understand that it's been hard for people, especially families, to get to City games on a regular basis, especially if they don't have season tickets at a somewhat more reasonable price. If you're having to pay resale market prices, it's hard. So we've talked about things like the free block parties and the other events that City put on to try to still be doing things for fans that don't cost anything. We've talked about City 2 games, which are really attractive and a great way to get people to City Park, especially if you have young kids, and super affordable, certainly compared to City games, and still a good atmosphere and a good quality of play. But this, if neither of those float your boat, if you're like, I don't want the block party because I want to see actual soccer, and if you say I don't want City 2 because that's not a packed house and it's a lower caliber of play in a lower league, well, this is as good as it's going to get. With Leagues Cup, tickets on sale starting at $34 for the Leagues Cup games. I think the home game, the two home games are FC Dallas on July 27th and FC Juarez of Liga MX.
Both home games, man.
On the 4th. Yeah.
So exciting.
And one of the many things, I mean, neither here nor there, but one of the many things that I think is questionable about Leagues Cup is that the Mexican teams have to come and play both their first round games in the U.S., but they consent to that in part for money. Anyway, we don't have to get into it.
That was agreed upon ahead of time.
Yes.
That was going to happen.
It's from the sporting standpoint, it's a little bit odd, but it's just how it is. Financially, it's what makes sense. So those tickets are on sale starting at $34, end of July, start of August. Both are weekend games, FC Dallas, FC Juarez. I think with fees on SeatGeek right now, I'm seeing like $50-ish to get in, which is maybe a little bit more than half the price of the lowest games. There are very few, if any, MLS games you're getting into for under $90 a seat. So it's about 50% off essentially for Leagues Cup in July and in August, especially for those of you who might follow Liga MX, which has been and remains popular in the United States. And it brings a little bit of international flair, both in terms of the teams, the players, the fans, but also the style of play. And you get to see something a little bit different. And I think City are going to take, not that they didn't last year, but I think City are going to take Leagues Cup very seriously this year because they have a lot more depth. Their squad generally is less run down because they haven't and won't have played as many games as they had at that point last year. And they're probably a little bit embarrassed is too strong a word, but I would imagine there's a sour taste in their mouth from the way that it went last year because they really were not very competitive in Leagues Cup last year. And that's the kind of thing that in my mind probably lingers a little bit, especially that 4-0.
Well, them getting bounced out of Champions Cup faster than they wanted to, they certainly want to take all of these games seriously.
But that Club America game, the 4-0 defeat at home was really not a fun one, especially because at that stage of the season, City fans were thinking pretty highly of the team, and with good reason. They had so much success. So Leagues Cup tickets available starting at $34 with the fees on SeatGeek. What I was just looking at, $50-ish, about half off what would typically be the get-in price. End of July, beginning of August against FC Dallas and FC Juarez for City and for the Leagues Cup. you can get those tickets on SeatGeek or probably on St. Louis City's website as well.
I think it's cool too when it comes to St. Louis City trying to make it all family friendly from City 2 games, right? Being more family focused. You got kids on the PA, you've got a bunch of kids in the supporter section, and to have earlier games, and then an event like this where you aren't experiencing necessarily the MLS league play, but we have our own MLS team in the stadium, and it's a great, experience the food, experience all the new things and the incredible things that City has done, and not at the same pricing that you have to do for an MLS game.
And I feel the need to emphasize too, I think people get in their heads that MLS is the top league, and therefore anything other than MLS is less.
I hate to say this, but no.
Which is right. Which is
I
true.
mean this in the nicest way, but no.
No, which is true for NextPro. For City 2, it is a lower league. It is a minor league team. It's not bad, but it is a minor league team. Leagues Cup is not minor league in any way. It's just a separate competition, same as US Open Cup. I mean, I guess some teams in the Open Cup are minor league, but
Sure.
It's still St. Louis City's first team playing in those other competitions.
Playing great teams.
It's just a different competition.
In a different
This is
league.
normal in soccer. You're just going to have to get used to it.
It's a world sport. So
Yes.
as I tease I like baseball, I like basketball, I like hockey. But as I tease my counterparts in broadcast who are like, oh, we're busy with St. Louis Cardinals. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm busy with a world sport.
Yes.
It's a world sport.
That's exactly right. So we will take a break, talk to Charles Bum. Speaking of the world sport, we'll talk about the highest level of play in North America, the North American Championship, the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and Columbus Crew representing MLS. Contextualize that a little bit, because to you, it might not sound like a big deal. To people who have been following North American soccer for a long time, Columbus being in the final and the way Columbus have gotten to the final is indeed a very big deal. That's coming up next. The St. Louis City Soccer Report continues after this on KMOX.
When you have Rhino Shield on your house, it does a couple of things for you. It beautifies the house.
He writes all kinds of stuff for all kinds of outlets about MLS and North American soccer, and at times beyond the men's game. We've talked about the women's game. We do all sorts of stuff with Charles. Thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, pleasure as always.
And you're staying up late for us too, because you're on Eastern time, so we appreciate you.
Hey, you guys got lucky because I just was playing pickup tonight, actually. So I'm fresh in the door. I'm sweaty, but good thing that doesn't matter on radio, right?
You were doing the playing. Well done.
Yes,
well, I
yes.
just played my first game back in 5 years last Sunday, and I'm still sore.
Rest is rust at this point, right?
Right. Totally.
That's exactly right. So let's start with the major story. We had Andrew Wiebe from Apple TV on last week, and he was saying, obviously Messi is the headline and the second headline and the third headline around MLS these days, and with good reason, not to take anything away from him. But as a result, even though they've been so good for now quite some time, and they're doing something that MLS teams have rarely, if ever, done, the Columbus Crew are somehow flying under the radar. Contextualize for some of our fans who are either maybe casual fans or are close followers of MLS, but maybe new to following the North American game. Contextualize for us what Columbus have done in reaching the final and how they've done it.
It's pretty delicious, I have to say. That the soccer gods show us over and over again that they have a wicked sense of humor. And we came into this year, as with really every year in the modern era, MLS looking to CONCACAF Champions Cup as, one of the main, if not the primary barometer for the league's progress as its, goal to be the preeminent league on the continent, to be in the global conversation, one by being in the mix and eventually competing in, and hopefully they hope eventually, thriving at the Club World Cup, which of course is coming to the United States in not very much time at all. And then, showing that they've not just, become competitive with, but have surpassed Liga MX in terms of, the upper echelon of talent and quality. And the team that pretty much dismembered Leo Messi's Inter Miami, CF Monterrey, ran into the Columbus Crew these past 2 weeks, and were comprehensively outplayed by the reigning MLS champions. And it was a beautiful game to watch. I have to say, I think whatever your rooting interest, whether as long as you weren't a Monterrey fan, I think you had to be impressed by the aesthetics of what the Columbus Crew did. They're a ball dominant team. They play some of the most proactive, aesthetically enjoyable soccer that I've seen in MLS in a long time, maybe ever. And now they're showing that can also win games, and they're 90 minutes away from being the champions of North America.
Besides seeing the fantastic parts of the game, I've gotten to see some of the highlights, and it's amazing. And we had our own St. Louis's Mr. Soccer, Bill McDermott, who is very fond. He's a St. Louis City fan at heart, but he is very fond of the Columbus Crew, having worked for them. He gave us a little preview of what that was going to be, and he told us, Nate and Jen, that's a team to watch. And besides what you just talked about, aesthetically pleasing soccer, what is the secret sauce for the Crew? There's just seems to be some magic in their play.
Well, I think we have to start with the coach, Wilfried Nancy, who really was, an amazing story even before this game. And regardless of what happens from here on out, this is the first Black coach to win an MLS Cup. This is someone who was, speaking bluntly, kind of a nobody, who succeeded Thierry Henry when he had to leave the Montreal job for family reasons and go back to Europe. And people kind of said, who is this assistant they've promoted up in Montreal? Are they being cheap? And it turns out this is one of the sharpest soccer minds in contemporary North American professional soccer. He has an incredible, I think, game model, but he also has a real human touch in the way he inspires his players, the composure, the resilience, the confidence that he's infused into his teams that I've covered, at least, to be brave under pressure, to invite pressure, to play through and to be the protagonist, and to do it against one of the richest, most successful, most talent-stacked teams on the continent at their place down in Mexico. I mean, this is like hen's teeth when it comes to that kind of performance from an MLS team. So it's a great storyline and also a great team in terms of their results.
For St. Louisans as well, looking for a connection maybe that goes beyond Bill McDermott. Of course, the starting goalkeeper for Columbus is Patrick Schulte, who is from St. Charles, played his Liga or club ball with Scott Gallagher, and then went on to the St. Louis Billikens, where he was very successful, and then beat St. Louis City 2, actually, in the 2022 MLS Next Pro Final, which was held in Columbus before he became the first choice goalkeeper for the Crew. And now he's, like every other great MLS goalkeeper in recent years, getting links to big clubs in England to potentially go and be the backup. But this is, Monterrey, obviously a big name club and 5-time winners of the North American Championship. only 3 MLS teams have ever won it. And, 2 of them, you have to go back to DC United in 98 and LA Galaxy in 2000. It was more than a 2-decade gap before Seattle won it a couple of years ago. Is this one of the most important games? This Columbus game against Pachuca on June 1st now, when they play in the Cup final. Where do you think this will rank among the most important games an MLS team has ever played, considering that the winner of that game will represent North America in the Club World Cup in 2025 when it comes to the United States?
Yeah, so I do want to, we'll come back to Patrick Schulte. I'm so glad you brought him up because he's somebody that the St. Louisans, I think, can be very proud of. But in the short term, I mean, this game is right up there, but I think we would say this about any game, any CCEC or CCL final that an MLS team participates in. You have to give a nod to the Seattle Sounders in 2022. They're the ones who kind of got to the mountaintop, broke the seal, broke the long string of ignominious failures, honestly, by on the part of MLS against Liga MX teams by beating multiple Mexican teams on their way to becoming the first MLS team in the modern era, is probably the best way to put it, to win the CONCACAF title. But whether, you still want to show that was not just a one-off, right? That you're reaching these finals and that you're winning at least a share of them. So there's been some heartache. LAFC has reached 2 finals and fallen short. Then there's been plenty of years where, an MLS team doesn't even get this far, right? I mean, things were looking pretty dire just a couple weeks ago when there was only one of the 4 semifinalists was from MLS, and there were some pretty comprehensive defeats that were handed out in the earlier rounds of this tournament. So I think what we've seen is that the sort of middle class of MLS has caught up to and arguably surpassed the middle class of Liga MX, which is progress. But when you look at the gigantes, as they say down in Mexico, the big 3 or 4 clubs that have the money, the fan base, the culture of success, the really ferocious home field advantage, those are the teams that have been the most difficult. The irony here actually is that there's almost the Mexican version of the Crew are on the other side of this. Pachuca is not necessarily a traditional giant. They've been done very well over the last couple decades. They've been here before. They have a great academy. They have a really fearsome home field advantage in large part because of the altitude. Pachuca is one of the highest altitude venues in Mexico. And so that in of itself is going to be a big challenge for the Crew. But you've got 2 teams that are brave, that trust young players, that have a very sort of a clear identity of how they want to play. So whatever your rooting interest, it really sets things up nicely for a final, which is for the first time now. This is a one-off final rather than a 2-legged event, which kind of adds to the intrigue.
You mentioned the altitude, which is especially interesting because obviously at the moment, Columbus are scheduled to play twice on June 1st, by the way, 6:30 and 8:15 Central Time. I don't think that's likely to happen. But they're scheduled to play just a few days prior, May 29th as well. And you'd imagine MLS will probably keep that game on the schedule, but reschedule their game that's on June 1st against Seattle. Would Columbus go as far as to play that May 29th game at home against New England without even having some of their top players in the squad? I mean, I think you'd be tempted to fly some of those guys there 48, 72 hours in advance of the game to try to help them adjust to the altitude, wouldn't you?
It's a great question, and I hope that we'll get a little bit of insight in the coming weeks on this because, for one, I don't have any inside information, but I would be very surprised if Columbus is not at least offered by the league headquarters the opportunity to reschedule the New England game. Over the past few years, as this has become a real priority for the league, and Mexico does it as well. They try to make it easier for teams that make these deep runs and kind of clear the lane for them domestically. And this is the trade-off here too. The Crew have been treading water as most teams do that make a deep run like this on the domestic front. I think they've drawn the last 4 or 5 or 6 matches in league play because that's so. This is the priority. So I think that they'll be able to set things up the way they want. But there's 2 schools of thought with altitude. Either get in there right beforehand to minimize the effect, or you spend as much time as you can. So yeah. I have a feeling, the ambition of these owners and the means they have, they'll try and get the squad in there early.
Yeah, it's a good point. And what you were mentioning as well with the deep run and how that can affect domestic play. I mean, we saw the exact same thing last year with LAFC. I don't think anybody felt that, or the first half of last season when LAFC were sort of pedestrian, that it was because all of a sudden maybe the most talented team in MLS at that point, at least pre the Inter Miami explosion, had all of a sudden dropped its quality so dramatically. It was it's just a really demanding thing, especially because the mileage that these teams pile up is already unprecedented for European leagues. When you add in then flights to Mexico on a regular basis and the raw number of games, I think it's fair to say it probably becomes very quickly the most physically, on top of that, also how warm it is during the spring and summer. I think it becomes very quickly the most physically taxing league in the world.
It is, and the roster rules are changing and updating. And there's going to be some significant sort of reforms coming just for the summer transfer window in MLS. But you still don't have the depth of squads that are the norm in Mexico and in the bigger leagues in Europe and in South America. So it's been a slow evolution for sure. But it's a run like what we've seen from Columbus, as they have gotten more common over the last decade or so, but it's still not easy, and you don't know when you're going to get back again, right? So I think there's no doubt about the focus that they're placing on this, and I think again, even if you don't have a rooting interest, these games are mostly on FS1 and FS2, and on some of the Spanish networks. It's a really interesting tournament. The people that get into the CONCACAF tournaments are the real sickos, and maybe a smaller audience, but it's so interesting, and it's so reflective of our region. So I encourage everybody to pay attention and tune in if you can. And again, especially with a St. Louis kid, Patrick Schulte has been really an inspiring story. A very young keeper, by goalkeeping standards, he's a kid still, and he's produced some really clutch moments, overcome some mistakes. He's really one to watch, and I'm intrigued to see where his national team career takes him. So I hope some of the listeners out there are watching the local kid come June 1st.
So I have two more for you. We want to respect your time. I know that we've kept you for a while already, but I have two more. And the first one is kind of big picture, and this puts you on the spot a little bit, but you're talking about the middle class of MLS relative to the middle class of Liga MX. I think everybody would agree at least progress has been made there, regardless of how you measure them against each other. Certainly MLS has improved relative to the middle of Liga MX. But you talk about those big clubs and the amount of money they spend both on their top of the line players and maybe more importantly on the rest of their starting 11 and on their depth, where they get outside of, what we would consider the DP players of their top 3 or 4 guys. How can MLS, well, we know how they can. It's loosen the various roster rules that they have. Do you think it's realistic for MLS in the next 5 or 10 years in the pursuit of surpassing Liga MX even at the top and trying to put themselves to some level on the global stage and on the global platform? Do you think it's possible that we see those kind of significant changes in terms of roster structure and those roster rules and putting some of these smaller market owners in a position where they got to start spending or they got to sell their teams?
It's a great question. I think it remains to be seen. For a long time, the primary answer to that has been you've got to build out that sort of second tier of your squad.
Right.
Of course, we know that you've got unlimited spending essentially on the top 3 players on your squad with the designated player rules. But as Caleb Porter of the New England Revolution said when his team crashed out to Club America in the previous rounds of CCC, they've got 10, 11 designated players, right? They can have a starting lineup of DPs in terms of that caliber of player, the money. So the question becomes, is it about spending? And this is where it is, of course, but it's also, there's more than that. And that's why it's so fascinating and ironic that the Crew are in this position and not Miami. If Miami had reached the final or won CCC, we would say, oh, well, it's Messi. He's an alien, right? They're Miami. They're different. But if the Crew do this, and this is why it's such a fascinating storyline, then I think you have a more nuanced conversation. You can say, hey, it's not just about the money, which there are elite players. Cucho Hernandez is the top level, Colombian international. He came from Watford in England, but he's part of a holistic system, right? And he's part of a game model, and that matters too. The idea of going toe to toe with the quality of play and the complexity of your ideas, that's a different kind of conversation, I think, than what we've had over the years to date.
Meanwhile, about Patrick Schulte, obviously then he had those links to some of the big clubs in England. Arsenal in particular were mentioned, which feels like it's just become the norm, right? We've seen it with Gaga, we've seen it with Matt Turner, we've seen it with Zach Steffen, that these guys who get their way into the U.S. national team conversation and certainly are among the top young goalkeepers in MLS at any given time get linked with the big clubs in England where they're going to go and be backups, or in Gaga's case, being so young, it's going to take some time. He's loaned out and that sort of thing. Do you think that's still an attractive path for young goalkeepers just because the money on offer at a club like Arsenal or like Manchester City is so significant, even if you're the number 2? Or do you think guys start to look and say, I'm not sure that for the development of Zach Steffen or for Matt Turner, that was really the best choice?
It's always a gamble, right? And whatever position you play, and it maybe gets heightened a little bit for goalkeepers because you're either starting or you're not, right? And or getting cup games. But I think there's always going to be the cultural draw, right? And especially for someone like Schulte, who comes up in the St. Louis soccer culture, I'm sure he's been dreaming about that moment, like so many kids growing up around the world do. You know that you're going to probably have to take a sideways step or a backward step in terms of the minutes and kind of your place in the squad. But if an opportunity comes and it's a win-win for you and your club, it's pretty hard to say no. And I think what makes him attractive is he's so young and he's got the modern goalkeeping package in a way that even Turner and Steffen weren't quite at the same level. To see, I believe he's still 23. And he's able to play with his feet. He's showing every week that he can play out of the back and be part of that, as well as do the shot stopping. And then the other big X factor is, does he make the Olympic squad? And is he on a really, really big world stage that has been a shop window over the years for clubs in Europe?
Charles, we appreciate you as always, even more tonight. This was kind of a marathon. We really made you earn it tonight. We appreciate you. Thanks so much for your time.
Always a pleasure, guys.
Charles Boehm of MLSsoccer.com and other outlets. You can follow him on Twitter at @CBoehm, BOEHM. I strongly recommend you do.
All good stuff. Like I was just, as you guys were talking, I was reading all through it. I'm like, this is good. This is so good.
We will talk a little local soccer coming up after the break. That's Jen's bailiwick. She'll have you when we return. It's the St. Louis City Soccer Report on KMOX.
What better way to support your nutrition than with the multivitamin that was created right here in St. Louis? Neovitin Original Multivitamin was created by St. Louis physician Dr. Abicki to support his own nutrition when he needed it most. Now,
Y98 St. Louis City Soccer Report continues on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Jennifer Cease and Nate Gatter wrapping up the St. Louis City Soccer Report with a local angle. Nate, I got contacted Dan Sweeney. He's the voice you hear at City Park when he comes on, and he scares the bejesus out of me sometimes when I'm not ready for him to practice and get ready to go. But he'll come on the stadium and give all the announcements and has a great voice. And he also, as many of us do, has a kid who plays soccer. And I got tipped off today that 10 local players from St. Charles FC will join DME Academy and play in the Super Cup this summer. This club, St. Charles 2020 Football Club, there's probably a story there, has a USL team. And join now, we are with Sean McGuigan Hart. Sean, I hope I said it right, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me. And that was 10 out of 10 for my
Yay!
pronunciation of my name.
I love it. I love it. Tell me a little bit more, like how great is this? So 10 players from your club heading over to Ireland this summer to play in what I understand is one of the world's most renowned youth football tournaments. July, I think it's 21 through 26. Tell me about that. How exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah, super exciting. To have players that are going to an event of that magnitude speaks volumes about what we're trying to do as a club and the opportunities that we're trying to provide our players. And also for me, on a personal note, to go and kind of test my wits against, some professional clubs from Europe as a coach is also super exciting as well. So, no, and again, there's more to it than just the soccer. Some of these players have never even left the country before. So, you factor that in as well. It's a really exciting event to be a part of, and we can't wait to go.
Sean, you mentioned something interesting, and obviously you're coaching, relatively high level youth players. And so it's not like rec ball where everybody's got to play and we're just there to have fun. At the same time, it is, I would imagine at times there is a give and take between development and short-term success, right? Between whether the biggest goal is to win or the biggest goal is to develop. Obviously, the biggest goal is to develop, but part of the way you develop is by winning. So for you as a coach, when you talk about matching wits and things, how does the desire to win integrate with the overwhelming desire to develop?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something that is a real tough balancing act throughout the time that you're with a team throughout the season, because, you are trying to obviously, factor in game time, factor in being competitive, and factoring in developing players. So, do we get it right all the time? Absolutely not. But I think overall, we do a good job. And in relation to this event, with regards to your question, it's even tougher, right? Because, we're going to this super high-level, prestigious event halfway across the world. We want to compete. We want to represent well. But also, you want to give everyone the opportunity to showcase their talent whilst we're there. And also not get too caught up in the event to the point where myself and the players don't enjoy it as well, because there is obviously a component to this trip with it being, in a different country, in a different setting and everything, where you want the boys to have fun on and off the field. So, it's about trying to get that balance right for this one. And, that's something that's already in my mind and things we're going to have to do and sort of standards and rules we're going to have to put in place whilst we're there. But we want the boys to, this could be a once in a lifetime opportunity for all of them. So it's not just about what happens on the field for this one. It's also about off the field, and getting that balance right is going to be really key, I think, to a successful trip overall.
If I'm looking at the right information, it looks like it's the junior sections groups, and I see different names there. Can you tell us a little bit about what kinds of clubs you're facing, what their names are, what their kind of prestige is in those different countries? Because it's certainly going to be different than what you face here on home soil.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because typically when American youth teams go over to the UK specifically, they kind of get laughed at because they're a bit naive, thinking that the game in America hasn't actually grown significantly in the last 5 to 10 years. So we kind of go in as underdogs, which is great, and that will suit us. But in terms of the teams in the bracket, we will face 2 local teams from Ireland, and they will be very tough games because they will be really, really motivated to do well because it's kind of on their home territory.
So they'll be tough games. And then we have Blackburn Rovers, who are a professional club in England and actually play just one tier below the English Premier League. And they were formerly in the English Premier League not too many years ago. So that's going to be a really tough test for all of us, but one that we're really looking forward to. And then if you look at some of the other teams in the other brackets that we could face in the next phase of the competition, you have West Ham United from the English Premier League, you have Celtic from the Scottish Premier League, and you have Rangers from the Scottish Premier League as well. So there's some really exciting teams that we could face later on in the competition as well that I'm really hoping we can do.
Well, Sean, this is a short segment. I'm sorry we don't have more time, but maybe promise before we get to July, come back on and give us a heads up and maybe then an update after the trip.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be great. And, I appreciate the opportunity you guys have given us to come on here and kind of let other people know about this opportunity that we've offered our players.
Awesome. And we've got plenty more to talk about with St. Charles FC. They have a USL Academy. They have other programs as well. That was Sean McGuigan Hart, who is the Academy U19 head coach. And the boys are heading over to Ireland in the summer. Can't wait to talk about it more later. We got one more segment. Nate and I will wrap it up next on KMOX.
Wait a second. Think twice before signing that petition. That innocent petition is not a replacement for
Soccer Report continues on America's Sports Voice, KMOX.
Just a couple minutes to wrap things up on the St. Louis City Soccer Report. Jen told you earlier, remember, no show next week. We will be off because of the Cardinals schedule, and then we'll be back with you.
No, not we.
Jen
You're
will.
bailing.
Jen will be back with you. Along
What do you
with
have something
somebody,
else going on? What are you doing?
In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be in St. Martin, so I will not miss you that much.
Well,
my life is going to be pretty good
man.
Next Thursday. Or two Thursdays from
I
now.
totally want to talk about soccer in St. Louis City, but I've never been to St. Martin.
Yeah,
That
if we had,
sounds
if
very
I
fun.
offered you a trade, I think you would take it.
You know what I'd also do? I would also go to Ireland with St. Charles 2020 team and Sean McGuigan Hart, because I know we got to spend more time talking about that. What a great opportunity. Can you believe that, being that age, you're going to go overseas and you're going to play?
We got to have him back on later in the summer and
Yeah.
hear how it goes.
How it
Some
goes,
big name
and
teams over there.
That's a big tournament. That's a big deal.
We talked to Sean McGuigan Hart. We talked for a long time to Charles Boehm. If you want to learn more about what Columbus Crew have been doing, making it to the Champions Cup final,
They're magic.
That was a great conversation, as well as talking about Patrick Schulte, the St. Louisan, who is in goal for them, former Billiken from St. Charles. Really, I always enjoy our chats with Charles. I think that one was right up there with the best, and we've had a few. You can go back and hear that on the free Odyssey app. We also told you about those city tickets, about half price on sale for Leagues Cup at the end of July and early August on SeatGeek. In the first hour, we heard from Dale Shelley and George Ganser, as well as Jen Cease's conversation with City right back Thomas Totland. All of that is on the free Odyssey app, where you can also go to hear Cardinals baseball live, to hear City soccer live, and remember, City back at it on the road against Houston Dynamo on Saturday night. Jen will have the pregame for you on our sister station, Y98, at 7 o'clock Saturday. Joey and Dale will have kickoff at 7:30. For all of our guests, for my partner Jen Cease, for Kyle Six, who's been running things in our downtown studio, Nate Gatter saying so long. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. It's the St. Louis City Soccer Report on KMOX.
Jules on Hampton in St. Louis Hills is paying some of the highest prices on gold, silver,